Who wants to have the turkey sandwich with me?
Yeah.
I will. I volunteer.
Okay.
I didn't just go home for lunch. I thought I was gonna go home for. Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Hi.
Hello all.
Hi. How do I mute myself? I'm on the phone. Hello?
The question was, how do you mute yourself?
Yes. I'm on the phone and I don't want to be distracting with any background noises here. So how can I mute that? Or do I use my...
I think you would just mute through the phone. So if you can hide the current screen, it may pull up the dial-in number page with your mute option.
Okay, I think I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So just, is it yeah. 1 minute. Yeah.
Okay, the time is 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order of the First Creek Ranch Metropolitan District. The chair does see a quorum. Please let the record reflect that Matt, Carla, Michael are all present, and Cindy is currently excused. She'll be joining us soon. Have the disclosures been filed with the Secretary of State?
They have.
Great, thank you. Are there any further disclosures that need to be filed at this time? Are there any further disclosures that need to be filed? No. All right, hearing none, moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda for First Creek? Thank you. Mary Ann, any changes?
No.
Okay, great. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as published.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this is the meeting of First Creek Ranch, Metropolitan District. At this time, the chair would invite any members of the public. If you're online, please raise your hand, and we'll call you that way. There's a sign-up sheet for those that are present. So at this time, the chair would ask if there's anyone here from the public that wishes to address the board for First Creek Ranch. Okay, hearing none, move on to legal matters. Mary Ann?
We do have a, we do have
Okay,
a,
okay, sorry.
we do have a consent agenda
Yes,
item,
I
which
got
would be the minutes.
I got it. Okay, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Moving on to legal matters. Mary Ann.
Yeah, so under legal matters, the district has received petitions for exclusion of property from First Creek Ranch Metropolitan District. For your information, that exclusion request is coming pursuant to the agreement that you have with the property owner and also with Aerotropolis Area Coordinating Metropolitan District, that if prior to development occurring, property would be excluded from First Creek and included into one of the member districts of the CAD. So later today at the Aurora Highlands Metro District Number 1, there'll be consideration of those petitions for inclusion in accordance with that agreement.
Okay.
So if you, the chair would want to open the public hearing on the 4 different petitions, we can do them separately or we can do them all at the same time. The first petition is for 73.513 acres of property. The second for 70.461 acres of property. The third for 55.128 acres of property. The fourth for 62.910 acres of property, all owned by Aurora Highlands LLC.
Great, thank you. At this time, we will please let the record reflect that Cindy Sharon has joined us. This time, we'll go ahead and open the public meeting, or I'm sorry, the public hearing for the purposes of consideration of the exclusion as was described by our legal counsel. The public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak regarding the public hearing regarding the exclusion? Let's see hands. This is none. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. This time.
The staff recommendation?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the staff recommendation is for inclusion of these properties again, exclusion of these properties from First Creek, so they can be included into the boundaries of one of the member districts, because the property is being considered for vertical development in the reasonable future, foreseeable future, immediately foreseeable future, and that is consistent with the agreement. Otherwise, these properties would not be currently in a district that would be taxed and feed to take their share of the cost of the improvements to the project.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask council, can I make one motion for all 4 exclusions at the same time, or must they be separate?
We prefer separate.
Separate, okay. So then I'll move for the approval of agenda item 3A.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carried.
And then I'll move for approval of agenda item 3B.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
And then I'll move for approval of agenda item 3C.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And finally, I'll make the motion for approval of agenda item 3D.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Well, moving on to item 3E. Mary Ann?
Okay, so the First Creek Ranch Metropolitan District currently has a very different service plan than the other districts that are currently member districts of the Community Authority Board. What we would, staff level recommendation to the board, I'd like to make it today, is that the board direct us to work with the city of Aurora to consider and process an amendment to the service plan so that they would be postured to be and have the authority and a service plan consistent with the other districts so that they could be a member. So to start that process, right now, the jurisdiction for considering the service plan for First Creek Ranch Metro District is with Adams County, because when that district was organized, the property was not annexed to the city of Aurora. So the first step in the process we recommend is the board adopt a resolution designating the city of Aurora as the jurisdiction to review their service plan. The city has the ability to say no. If they don't want to take that jurisdiction, then the service plan amendment, if you wanted to proceed with it, would be processed in Adams County. So
we can try it, okay? And this is a resolution of the board authorizing our council to proceed in this manner, right?
yes, and to accept the designation
Of Aurora for this district. So I'll move for the approval of agenda item 3E1.
Thank you, Michael.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. I believe that's all for business before First Creek. Yep. Anything else? Okay, then at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn from First Creek Ranch Metropolitan District meeting. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Moving on to the Aurora Highlands Metropolitan District, number 1, 2, and 3, collectively known as districts. This time, we'll call the meeting to order at 1:08. The chair does see a quorum. Please let the record reflect that Matt, Carla, Michael, and Cindy are all present. Have the disclosures been filed with the Secretary of State?
Yes, they have.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any further disclosures by board members that need to be filed?
No?
No.
Okay. Hearing none. Right. Are there any changes to the agenda, Matt?
Not to my perspective, the agenda looks good to go.
Okay, perfect. Are there any changes, Denise?
No, sir.
Okay, great. Then the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as published. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, the chair will open the floor for public comment. For members of the public who want to express their views to the board on matters that affect the district and are not otherwise listed on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. This time we're going to go with Nick, we'll go with you first, everyone who's present. Is there anyone else that signed up? Okay, start with you, sir.
Sure. I prepared a statement, and I'll provide this to you in copies so you have it with your notes for the meeting, as well as, I don't know if you saw, but there was an article written in the Gazette recently about our metro district, so I will provide a copy of that to you as well if you haven't seen that. And I will paraphrase from my prepared remarks, so I'd like to try to stay as close to time as possible.
Thank you.
But I wanted to let the board know that after attending the board meeting on November 18th here in this room, it was abundantly clear that the Aurora Highlands Community Authority Board really doesn't want to hear from the community. It seems that you prefer instead to simply focus on your authority, that word, not the community portion. You're making multi-billion-dollar bond decisions on our behalf, committing us to that without taking in consideration the public interest or the community interest. And my personal view is that this is unethical and immoral. It is not illegal, and I know you will point out that it is not illegal, but what I don't prefer and what residents that I've talked to, as well as the Coloradans for Metro District Reform, we're all aligned that we're working with the state legislature to put in laws to stop your behavior. And in my mind, that's very sad that we have to work with the legislature to stop you from doing what you're doing. That is not okay, and we're not okay with that. And as an example, in the last meeting, Michael Sheldon made it a point to say to call one of the residents out and to say, hey, you don't live in this district, do you? And I think the point there was that, hey, she doesn't live in this area, but I think it backfired in that this has been going on for years and in multiple developments. So where that individual lives, as she pointed out, they will never get out from underneath the interest on the bonds that was approved for them on their behalf. So I have a lot of detailed information in here, but I just want to, like I said, I was going to read the whole statement, but I don't want to go through that and take the amount of time that it would take to do that. But like I said, in polling, I can have your time? Okay. So, considering, the way the last meeting went, and if we listen to Carla's entitlement-laden speech to us that it was our choice to move here, and we don't have to live here, which was very unprofessional and very condescending to us as a group, I will say that when we moved in here, we didn't realize that choices were being made for us that impact our taxes and our tax liability for years to come, decades to come. And contrary to what Carla said when she called my salesperson a liar during that meeting, is that I was told there wasn't a district, there wasn't an HOA, there weren't any fees, and I actually signed an amendment during my buy process to add that to what I was doing. But Matt, you pointed out that before a single shovel of dirt was overturned, this district was set up. That's true. So there wasn't disclosure. And you'll say, there was disclosure at the time of signing for your home. Correct. Along with 62,000 other documents. And there wasn't disclosure at the time of putting money down. There wasn't disclosure throughout the process. There isn't disclosure of, this is how many hundreds of millions of dollars of bonds we have already committed to you, and we're about to issue another 375 plus million, in addition to the reissuance of the existing bonds. So none of this sits well with the residents of this community, and the Coloradans for Metro District Reform have been extremely instrumental in explaining what's going on here and how, yes, it's technically legal, but it shouldn't be. So, and we look at this board as a symbol. Every single person in the CAB board and the Metro District board is related to or friends of or paid by the developer himself or a spouse of one of those people. So Matt, you and your spouse are on this board. You're paid $45,000 per month out of our HOA dues committed to the CAB to be a consultant and to run this board. I would love to make $540,000 a year.
Me too.
To consult to a friend of mine.
Yeah.
That would be great. So, and that was as written in the Gazette. So I'm assuming that David Mavoya did his research and found that out and dug through the hundreds and hundreds of financial pages that are put out here, but are very, very difficult to read, and they lack receipts. That I will say. So again, there's much more information, and I will give you a copy of what I'm saying here. And I will let you know, too, that I met with my state representative yesterday morning and explained to Daphne Michelson that we're very concerned about this, and she said she's very concerned about this and doesn't like how metro districts are created and run in the state of Colorado. And she is helping us work with Mike Weissman, another Colorado state representative. They don't care. So,
wait, let them look at you while you're talking. So everyone turn around and listen to what he says because it's very important.
It's his time.
Scott.
okay, so the Colorado State Legislature, as I mentioned, is looking at this, and I know there's a bill that goes into effect on January 1st to attempt to address reform of developers in this state. But I also know that the developers rushed to the speaker's desk to get that bill watered down and changed to prevent the measures from going in place. We're very aware of what's going on, so we will continue to push for reforms against the very actions of what you are doing. I have much more to say, but I'm going to end it right there.
And you guys should be ashamed of yourself. Do you know how hard we work? Do you know that this is supposed to be like a retirement place where we could come and know that what we were promised is done, but now you're going to put more money on? You know, I'm 58 years old. You're going to increase my costs? How am I going to pay for that? I I mean, I'm just getting older. I'm not gonna have a job till I'm 90 or till I die. I would really like you guys to just look into your hearts. Man, come on. Look into your hearts and see what you're doing to people. I'm tired of people in higher places taking advantage and just poo-pooing people. Okay. And don't care. Why don't you care? Aren't you human beings? Don't you remember when you didn't have the money you had? Do you understand how hard it is today? Trying to make ends meet. And yet you're sitting back and doing this to people. You should be ashamed. Be ashamed. You should think about it. And repent. Live a better life.
Anyone else that would like to address the board? Anyone else sign up? Okay, moving on to those that are online. John from Maine, you're the next caller.
Yes, hi, John Henderson. Happy holidays to all of you. As you know, we have taken a position against the actions there in Aurora Highlands, and I wanted to specifically identify several records and at least give you all some pause and perhaps reflection so that you wouldn't be making this decision until the residents have had an opportunity to participate, not simply observe, but participate in the decision-making process. First, the agreement establishing the CAB violates Title 32, Title 39, particularly with respect to Title 29 and your application of that. It violates the Equal Protection Clause of the United States and the comparable provisions of the Colorado Constitutions, where you're giving 7 votes to the developer and 1 vote per resident for a total of 3. The single party agreements establishing that CAB, where Mr. Hopper signed on behalf of each and every one of the districts, including the developer, is simply unconscionable and, quite frankly, illegal. The issuing of debt by the CAB, issuing or setting tax rates and mill rates by the CAB, deciding how much debt to issue and how much taxes to issue is all in violation of Title 29. We respectfully ask you all, in the spirit of true transparency, which you at least articulate, the way to do that would be to post in very large print in your visitor's office a disclosure, a financial disclosure, disclosing to the potential home buyers and residents that you have authorized debt of $46.4 billion. That would be $3.8 million per home, even if you develop 12,000 homes. That you've already authorized debt in over $100 million at over $700,000 per home. That you are now issuing another $515 million debt, which is not for refunding. Only 116 of that is for refunding. It's $399 million of new debt. The new homeowners, the people coming into your visitor center, are entitled to know how much debt you are imposing upon them when they buy a house. It's clear that you haven't done that. It's clear that you've hidden that information from the homeowners. And you have a legal obligation as fiduciary representatives of that community and to disclose that information.
Wrap up. Time to start. Can you wrap up there? I'm sorry, we don't do that. You're welcome to speak. So, John, I'll give you a second to wrap up if you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you. I also think it would be very helpful if you established a review committee of the residents so that they could review the expenses. You're spending their money to hire lawyers to represent you you're spending their money to hire a PR firm to represent you. It would be quite appropriate as fiduciaries to the residents to spend money to hire an independent engineer for the residents, independent of the developer, to review those costs to determine whether or not they're appropriate and to represent their.
I need you to wrap up, sir. You're over time.
Thank you again for your time, and hope that you're listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Others would like to speak? Have you signed up or not?
Yes, although I can't raise my hand for some reason on the Zoom call, I'd like to speak.
And could you state your name?
Absolutely. My name is J.D. LeBeau Jr. I am a member of Coloradans for Metro District Reform. And I'd like to echo some of the sentiments that have been brought up today and give you some sort of clarity into what we're trying to do to protect residents for this abuse that's occurring to them across Colorado as well as across the nation. Some of the abuses that you're doing really kind of stab at the heart of greed. Greed is at the pure base of evil, and making money on the backs of unknowledgeable residents who come into a community very excited about buying a new home, probably a very well-built home. I've seen some of those homes there, as much of them are, without them really knowing all of the debt that you're imposing upon them is pretty unethical. We continue and will continue to fight these abuses. We will not back down. We will not allow your threats of lawsuits and litigation deter us from protecting the residents of this community, as well as recognizing that once we do get into legislative as well as litigation in the judiciary, your unenforceable contracts will be made public. So I really encourage you all to reflect upon the money that you're making already. And I know you're going to try to rush through and press through all these bonds issues and try to get more debt imposed. Just know that we are here, we are watching, we are not going away, and we will not be deterred, nor will we sit back and be threatened to walk away. Last point I'll make before I wrap up, and it's a question that you can either address today or at some other time, or maybe it'll be disclosed at some other time. You approved some bond debt, I believe. Who was that bond debt sold to? Who was the purchaser of that bond? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to move on to consent agenda items. The November 4th, 2021 meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Carla. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. 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 Thank you. Motion carried. Moving on to legal matters. Mary Ann.
Oh, I'm
This
sorry,
is
Matt. No worries. I'm on the phone and not in the room, so I understand it's easy to miss me. So we are to legal matters. We have, similar to the exclusion petitions for First Creek, these are petitions for inclusion. There's 4 of them that were submitted by Aurora Highlands LLC. You can open the public hearing for all 4 together, and then we can take the motions for each of them individually. And I'll just run through them quickly, and then we can open the hearings. One is for 75.513 acres. Another is for 70.461 acres. Third is for 55.128 acres, and the fourth is for 62.910 acres. And these correspond with the exclusions that were just approved, and the inclusions will be done pursuant to the agreement that Marianne McGeady had mentioned before as part of the CAB relationship and the debt issuance. The notices for these hearings were published in the Aurora Sentinel on December 9th, and we recommend approval. We have not received any objections related to these inclusions. And so if you'd like to open the public hearings, and then we can take a motion on each of them, or if there are any questions, let me know.
Thank you. At this time, the chair will open the public hearing for items 3A, B, C, and D. Public hearing is open. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to enter into the record any comments related to the inclusions being presented today? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing, and the chair would entertain a motion on item 3A.
Motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item 3B. Chair would entertain a motion to approve item 3B.
Motion.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carried. Moving on to item 3C. Thank you. Motion to approve. Is there? Thank you. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion 3D. Is there a motion? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Agenda item 3B carries. Moving on to item 3E. Matt, can you just explain that real quickly? I know that that's just a change in the firm's name and reorganization, and so we would still have you engaged on these districts.
Yeah, real quickly, so everyone knows I spoke with Matt about this. Collins, Cockrell, and Cole, as of January 1st, will no longer be practicing together as a firm. I will be in a firm of Cockrell, Ela, Glesney, Greer, and Ruland, the acronym of CGR. We're going with Kager as a shorter version of the name, and I will be practicing there beginning January 1st. So I must notify you of this change since Collins, Cockrell, and Cole will no longer be practicing law. You do need to find new legal counsel, whether that is me at my new firm or someone else. If you would like to retain me going forward, what would be helpful today would be a motion and a second directing Matt to work with me on that engagement. If you'd like to take it under consideration, that is also fine. But that is the happenings with my firm.
Great.
Matt, I'll make that motion today.
Okay, motion has been made. Is there a second? Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to continue with Matt as our legal counsel for these districts. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carried. Is there any other business to come before Aurora Highlands Metropolitan Districts 1, 2, or 3?
Not from my perspective.
Is it okay if I make a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason I want to make a comment now, I'm not sure how long everyone is able to stay, and we have a lot of meetings to get through. This is a comment I would otherwise make during the discussion on the bonds that are being considered for issuance today. One of the things I wanted to clarify is I hear you and I hear your concerns and others about tax increases. When the plan was put together, the financing plan for the districts and the CAD, there was a long-term vision of that plan. And so the property taxes, the total amount of property taxes paid in this year was set from a certain mill levy rate that is going to stay the same. So the amount of debt that is being issued was a part of that plan. And again, issuing more debt is not increasing the amount of annual taxes that you will pay. It is true, it's for a long time. It is true, but it is not increasing. Now, your property taxes may adjust based on the value of your house. That is true. If your house increases in value, your taxes go up. If your house decreases in value, your taxes go down. But the mill levy that's imposed by this district, by these districts and the district you live in, through the financing coordinated through the authority board, is not changing based upon the debt. There is a bigger finance plan. The other thing I wanted to say is, after the first of the year, the chair had referenced it in the last meeting that there is going to be community meetings where we can have time to provide explanation for all the things that are going on, what that financing plan looks like over time, what the construction looks like over time, amenity phasing, all of those things. And I appreciate your patience with us as we put those presentations together so we can explain them. There's just so much here. I mean, where you live is a part of such a larger community that we have all the information that we need time to roll it out and share it with you. And I'm not saying that you should agree with me that it's reasonable that the financing is done through property taxes. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that the fear that I hear and the angst and concern that I hear that your property taxes are going to go up because of this debt is not based in reality of the plan that the board has or what the city of Aurora approved when they approved the service plan for the district that you live in. There is a maximum property tax that can be imposed for that, and there's a maximum number of years it can be imposed. And none of that is being violated. And again, I appreciate your perspective that you have a different view of whether this kind of financing should be available for public infrastructure. But again, the fear that your taxes are going to be extraordinarily high because the mill levy is going to increase over what it is today is not based on reality. But again, we are not prepared to do all those presentations now. I just wanted to tell you, we are hearing you, and we are listening to your concerns, and we are preparing presentations to give you all the details that you need to understand better what's happening.
If we may, can we close the meeting and then allow everybody to talk for a moment? Sure. Just a suggestion, if you guys are okay with that. And then and then we don't need to time you, but we can allow you to talk to Marianne for a moment, and then we'll open up the next meeting, if that's okay?
Yeah.
What do you
Let's go ahead and
keep it open?
Because then we order to it. And I'll get to you in just one second. Just as a follow-up to that, a couple of comments that were made, and I'm not going to address all of them, but I'd like to address a couple from.
You had a chat message.
Scared to read it. But one of the things that I wanted to say is that we do appreciate your involvement in the company. And it was clear after the last meeting, there's certain things that we want to do, including, not everyone's going to get an opportunity. There's going to be opportunity to run for the board. Not everyone's going to get an opportunity to serve on the board because there's a limited number of seats. So what we're going to be looking at in the new year is forming other committees so that residents have an opportunity to be involved, both at the development level in advisory roles, as well as on your neighborhood. So, because your neighborhood is the first neighborhood, there's going to be another neighborhood, there's going to be a neighborhood down here, and we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate and be involved in some of the decisions that are made, especially from maintenance and operations, as well as landscape and architecture and things that happen within your neighborhood. And so we will be rolling that out after the first of the year. Another thing I want to address is the disclosure of, and I understand you've already bought your home, so this isn't going to help you, but you've raised some good points. And one of the things that we want to look at, and we're working on currently, is to go above and beyond what the disclosure is of the state statute, so that people, when residents, future residents, are looking at homes, that they know right up front that they're in a metro district and not hidden in a paragraph in your sales contract, but a one page that is clear, that shows that you're in a metropolitan district. This is what that means. These are the projects that they do. The metro district is what's providing the vision that you saw when you bought your house. They're going to provide the parks, and they're putting in the sewer and the water and the roads, and they allowed the houses to be built. All that will be on that very clean, one-page, succinct document, so everyone will know that. And an example, and our manager has worked on examples of this that will show, based on a $500,000 house, here's what the state formula is, divided by 7.15%, divided by 1,000, that's how many mill units that your mills get assessed to, and here's an estimate of what, on a $500,000 house, what that, and then you can adjust by then because you'll have the math. But I think we want to go above and beyond. And when I said at our last meeting that a lot of these decisions were made before, and the debt was taken on before the first shovel, that's absolutely true. Every development's that way. You can't wait until 60,000 people live here to make a decision put in the road that allows the first house to be built. So some of those decisions had to be made. To Mary Ann's point, and I want to maybe explain that in layman's terms versus the legal side of it, is that the city of Aurora, you're very lucky, because when you read some of these articles in the newspapers from other developments, what you'll see is they didn't have a mill levy cap. And so development was allowed in the past to increase it and, to your point, increase those taxes and never to have a limit on it. Before the first shovel, before the first dollar was committed here, the city of Aurora said, here's the cap. This is all you can impose. 50 mills, that's it. Period. Now, yes, it gets adjusted as your value goes up. It also gets adjusted as there's the thing in Colorado called Gallagherized, so it balances out so that revenue stream stays the same. But the 50 mills can never go up. It also has a debt limit on time. And so each service plan allows that it can only be imposed for a certain amount of time. So another article that I read that was in the Post talked about a district where they waited until year 30, and then they said, okay, we're gonna refinance these for another 30 years, and just stuck the residents with all. We can't do that. We have a limited amount of time, and that's it, and a limited amount of tax. And so the improvements that you see today, when you look around and there's trails that aren't connected to things, there's piles of dirt, there's pipes on the ground, there's roads that aren't open. What the CAB will be doing today in issuing that debt is one, and if you stick around, you'll get the full show. But lowering the interest rate, and it does, contrary to what you've been told, apparently, it does refinance the debt that was originally. That is part of what's being issued. It's not on top of that, but it does refinance that and takes it from an 8% interest rate to a market rate. It takes it from being held privately to Wall Street and retirement funds and other people holding those bonds, and lowers it down to a 5.75% interest rate. That is a huge savings, and I'm going to put Kyle on the spot later to tell you what that means. But that really brings down that rate, which means that savings allows it to be paid off faster. So all of those things are good things. And the last thing I would say on that I want to say was that the debt that was issued not to finish everything, what you see that's happened so far, the first 60 homes at the 50 mills over the next 50 years would not create enough revenue to pay for that. And so, nor to finish that. And so the additional debt finishes that so that you have a park, and you have an aquatic center, and you have the trails, and you have all the things that you were sold, and it does not increase the amount that you pay, because that is set. And so I think that, there's people out there that want to point at metro districts, and unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever it is, in the state of Colorado, that is what the state of Colorado has said. This is the funding. This is how these things are funded. But what we want to do, and what we're committed to doing, is to go above and beyond to make sure that disclosure is out there, that transparency is there, that involvement occurs. We've heard that when you were here, and we're going to be committed to doing that. That's all I have. I know Nick wanted to speak, and we'll go to Nick first.
So I appreciate all of that, Marianne. The explanation is great, and I wanted to let you know that the vision and plan, as detailed in the drawings and the mock-ups, whatever, they're beautiful, and that's what sells people to want to come and live here and be a part of this community. So, and the amount of debt, the mill levy cap, all of that is amazing. It's great. So protects us from taxes and all of that. But that's only 1/3 of the story. The other parts of the story are two things. It's the lack of transparency and the rush to get all of this done, number one. Number two, with the lack of transparency, the appearance of, and what I'm pretty certain is, the developer is bearing no ultimate long-term responsibility for those costs. 100% of the costs of all of the beautification of all of this will fall on us. So rather than the developer being able to make hundreds of millions of dollars on this development, he'll make billions of dollars, because at the end of the day, all of his costs will be offset by us, whether it's, I don't care if my taxes cap out at $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is a year, the community, this community will always be making the developer uber wealthy on our backs. I'm in business. I have an MBA. I know how business works. I know how a P&L works. I run a P&L for my company. There's a line on a P&L called cost of goods sold. When that bottoms out to zero, it means you're 100% profitable. That's what this looks like. In last meeting, we asked for transparency. We asked for a delay in the vote on additional bonds and said, hey, educate us. Talk to us about this. Matt agreed to do that. Nothing has been scheduled. No receipts have been produced. There hasn't been a sidebar meeting. Why the rush to get all of this additional stuff done? And Matt made the comment that, well, you have to make decisions before any residents can be here. Understood. But there's now 60 plus homes here. Why not amend the rules and say, oh, you know what? Now we have residents. Let's not wait until the May 2022 election. Let's do a special election and get community and the residents involved. There's no interest for that. This is a rush to give the developer maximum profit on the backs of the residents. So, in closing, it's not the vision that's objectionable, it's the implementation, the lack of transparency, and the risk that you all are putting on all of us, irrespective of what we want. That's what I have to say about it. So, appreciate the explanation, Marianne, but that's only a third of what's going on.
Thank you for that. One comment just on the rush, and Kyle can jump in here. He's with D.A. Davidson, who's our underwriter. When we started looking at how we could lower the interest rate to save everyone money, that was in August. Rates were sub 5%. We went to the market and got 5.75. That's where the market has moved to. Deals that closed the day after closed at over 6%. So the rush is that we'll see what they are, because there's other debt that other districts are going to be letting out in after first of the year to see where those land. But we missed one window to get it even lower. So the rush is that we are racing the clock on interest rates going up. And the feds have already said they're raising interest rates after first of the year. So that's going to cost. If we can drop it from 8% and we could have got sub 5%, even being sub 6%, we're in a much better position. You're in a much better position. And so I think to rush to get a savings for taxpayers is absolutely prudent for us to do.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
John, you got your hand up? John from Maine.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the frank conversation. These are the kinds of conversations that we should all be having, but having a lot sooner before you issue $515 million in bonds. With respect to with respect to Ms. McKee's comments, it's true that you're locking the residents in at a 50 mil rate for a very, very long time. But what she's not saying is that there is no limit, zero limit, unlimited mill rate on the operations and maintenance. And what you're doing is you're saddling these new residents with a lot of infrastructure that's going to have to be maintained and operated. And that's going to cost them a lot of money that's going to have to be spent much higher than that 50 mil rate. And what you're also doing is basically you're saying to a homeowner, when you buy this house, you are automatically maxing out the statutory limit for mill rates for debt at 50 mils, and you're going to have that for 30, 40, or 50 years. But the problem is you don't say that to them. You don't tell the residents this, so they don't have an opportunity to make a choice. If they're taxpayers and they're voting on this, they get a choice. But you took that away from them in the initial ballot issue, and you said, no, you don't get a choice. The developers are going to make that choice for you. And that's a problem, because if you're going to be a government, if you're going to impose taxes, and you're going to vote for other people, you can't do that and still comply with your fiduciary duty if you don't give the voters the right to vote on their own taxes. And that's the fundamental problem here. You guys can develop up the wazoo, you can spend as much money as you want to, but your money, not their money. What you're doing is leveraging your profits with their votes. And that's not government. That is not a democracy. That is not representative government. And that's what you're doing here. And Mr. Hopper, with all due respect, please, you are refinancing $167 million in debt. You were issuing new debt of $399 million. The numbers are in your budget. They are what they are.
John, I'm going to cut you off there because I'm going to cut you off, John. John, I'm cutting you off because, misinformation and misleading this, you should be ashamed of that. That is not fair to these. You're talking about transparency, sir. You're talking about transparency. You're talking about transparency. We're committed to transparency. You tell the truth.
Represent Don can't change facts. Now listen, if we're going to have a conversation, you had your time. Now this is our time, okay? Everybody gets an opportunity. Now with respect, with respect, what you're saying.
And it makes it really hard for us
I'm
all
sorry,
to
folks.
respond. And I'm sorry too. I know a lot of people are upset and
Is
have
making
now you're angry
this-
at me, which is okay. I'd be happy to talk to you guys anytime about this, any questions you have. We did host an event as the developers on Friday where we welcomed you guys to come ask us in a casual forum anything you wanted to ask at all. Marianne was available for 4 hours that night as well, on her own time, as well as my father and I were. Cindy was there with us too. We just wanted to have it be a casual forum for anybody to come and ask us these questions so that it didn't seem like we were in some high, far away place where you couldn't reach us. So we'll continue to discuss all of this more. We'll continue to talk to you guys and answer your questions. But misinformation is really hard. And it's really hard for me to sit here and not say anything when people are saying untrue things about me and twisting my words and making me out to be a liar. But I'm getting stronger and I will take it. And I know we're doing what is best for the community, and we're trying to build a place that people would want to live in. And my comment got misconstrued last time because I was just asking for folks to do the due diligence when they go look for homes to decide where they really want to live, because you certainly could live in an area that didn't have a metro district. And this is the statement that everybody keeps taking the wrong way and making it seem like I'm saying it in a really negative, rude way, and I'm not. It's certainly your choice to decide to live in a neighborhood that has an HOA. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people want the amenities, and some people don't want them. But in a neighborhood with a metro district and with all these amenities, this is how it is run. But you also don't have to live in a place like this, and you can live anywhere. So I just wanted to say I never meant it in a negative way or a degrading or demeaning way, and that's certainly not who I am. It's not my character. So I'm sorry if anybody took it the wrong way. And if you want to talk to me after this meeting, I'll stick around and be available for you guys.
Is it okay for me to comment?
Yes, one comment, and then would you speak to him next? Thank you.
Rudolph Hicks, I'm a resident here, and she said we can pick and choose in the right way. Maybe this may not be your problem, but Richmond Homes, when they told me there's going to be an HOA, I said, well, I'm going out. I was told I was going to lose a portion of my deposit money, my down payment. I'd worked my entire life for this. So basically was told if you walk away, there is going to be some loss of you. I said, no, I signed up when you said no HOA. Well, there's going to be some loss of you. It's up to you to get an attorney to figure out how you land in this. So no, I didn't have a choice to live where I wanted to live. I continued to build here because of that. That was the first thing that came to mind when they said, by the way, there's an HOA there. That's the first thing I told my wife. I said, we're pulling out. We were informed over and over again. You will lose a portion of your deposit. You will lose a portion of your earnest money, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you want to hire an attorney. And that's only going to cost more. My wife is a 20-year retired Air Force vet. We worked our asses off. This is my forever home. I shelled out $260,000 of my hard-earned money to put down to build this home, so I could have a shorter term, to have a closer end of debt. And yet all I'm incurring is more debt. And like you said, we don't have the choice here, but I wasn't offered a choice. I was told I was going to lose my money if I walked away. That was my first pull was, you know what, if this is going to be HOA, that's not what we wanted, let's go. And this is not a cab thing, but this is you guys are working with Grace, but these things need to be said clearly.
Yeah.
They're not transparent about it. There is no transparency.
I'm so sorry that you had that experience, first off, because
that's exactly what I was
I'm really, really sorry that
I
you had that
absolutely agree with you. That's why, again, I think that we're committed to getting more I know it doesn't help your situation, but it might help the next person because they need to know up front. There's no hiding of a metro district. It needs to be up front so that every buyer can make an informed decision and understand that. Yeah.
My other home, I was forced by Richmond to list by a certain date because it was a two-hill. So my other house was sold.
Yeah.
I would have said to be homeless if I had walked away there. And for you guys to say, well, we had choices. There was no transparency. There was no transparency.
It's super unfortunate. I think the problem is the nomenclature for things too, and we're going to work harder to make that be more available for people to understand and be more transparent.
Something you would say, like I said, as you walk through the front door, or that should be the biggest bonus.
I agree.
The problem is that we don't call it an HOA, but it works like an HOA, and so that's the problem. So we will do our best to make sure that we work with the Metro District office on that, because it is not a homeowners association in that word, but it does operate like that. For snow removal and things like that.
I appreciate you telling me. Yeah.
That last 2-foot snowstorm, nobody removed shit out. Excuse my language. Nothing. We got 2 feet of snow. Nothing was removed out. My truck was stuck. My wife was stuck. No one removed anything. And that's what all these fees and all this money we're paying for should be going towards it. I'm not seeing it. That's where I have the issue. That's why we become so upset. We're
really
not seeing
sorry.
it. We're the residents. We're some of the first people that were here. We popped our money down. We said Aurora Highlands is supposed to be the next greatest, best thing. I expected a tax increase because this is a brand new community. I expected to be at a higher point tax. That was common sense thing. But where these numbers are is atrocious. And I said there was no transparency about it. It was take it or leave it. And if you don't like it, you're going to lose some of your money. That was flat out what Richmond told us. These are the housing people that you guys are working with and that are all involved in. That's a flat out what I was told. You can walk away if you like, but it's not going to be a carefree walk away.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Carla. I think the vocabulary is confusing because there is no HOA. No, there isn't one. But there is a monthly recurring fee that's part of that over finance plan that I was talking about. On the operating side, that is a part of that budget and a part of that expectation. I appreciate John mentioning the operating budget because we keep focusing on the debt, but the total mill levy that was imposed for collection this year, it is not only taking into account the debt in the long-term plan, it also has the operating in there and has that fee in there. And so again, when we make the presentation on all those pieces and set the committees up like Matt is suggesting are going to happen next year, then we can get residents involved in understanding who are interested.
I can't even get them to keep on the street lights for more than 2 days in a row. Who are we spending all this time?
Yeah, so Rudy, is your name,
Rudy.
my eyes are not, I'm not trying to read your jacket. I got a whole list of resident feedback from the people who attended, the holiday party on Friday night. Hearing what you're saying now, you're our eyes and ears out here, and so we need, everybody who lives here, so we need that feedback. We got feedback on trash collection, snow removal, all of those pieces, and so,
there should have been a vote before they went with waste management, because waste management doesn't.
We actually didn't get the choice for waste
I
management.
had to chase him down
We don't.
on Saturday, because it was the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
For my trash, because he rolled right by and said, oh, well, I'm gonna just go to the next house. And when I went and chased him down, I said, you skipped one. Hey, you cut me off, you do that again, I'm not dumping your trash.
So,
What is this?
So again, hearing what you're saying, we are hearing what we want everybody's feedback, on all things, including those things. And I did give the chair, the list of all the things, and I didn't get that level of detail, but I did hear, I don't know if it's Tuesday or Friday, it's not consistent, I don't know when the recycling is, we look on the website.
So they completely moved my trash bins around. In 1 week, they skipped them all together, and when my wife called, and she said, oh, you waited too many days to call us. What do you mean? You skipped it. My trash has been sitting out in front of my house for 3 days. I can show you on my doorbell over here when you drove right by and did not empty my trash. And you won't come back to empty, so I'm stuck with garbage and smelly food traffic for 2 weeks because this is the company that we've contracted.
Understood. So one of the things that, it's not in this in-between meeting, the board can't add. And on the agenda for, I think we're going to be considering at the authority board level is getting some more staff support that's been focused specifically on these resident needs-based issues. Because there's a lot going on in this community, and, you know, I think the question is, why are you hurrying to debt? One of the reasons hurrying to debt, at this moment is to get the lower interest rate on the refinancing. The other point is to get the lower interest rate on the new construction. We're running $4 to $7 million a month in construction here, and the construction for everybody's future, the value of your homes, the completion of the community on the schedule to meet the city's requirements and everybody's requirements, we can't stop construction. So we're trying to get the lowest interest rate possible for the refinance and the new money.
Thank you. Yep.
This is a bill for election and zero. And we can, is it on our back? Yes or no?
I think I hear what you're saying. I think to discuss the bigger picture of how public finance works in a project like this and how it starts, And where it goes to, and no, it's not a yes, I don't represent the developer, so I have no idea what his position is. It's not my place to
So
know
can we
that,
get an answer on that?
but not from me,
No, I mean,
Yeah.
okay, the board is all here.
yeah, so I
Yeah,
think,
but-
again, you're asking somebody
we
to
don't work
answer a
for the
question who
district.
is not here. So I don't think, no one here speaks for that position, but I appreciate the question.
So
So,
how can we find that answer out?
and it was a rhetorical question when posed to me, you understand? I don't represent that person. So I think we need to stick to the, yeah, but I think we need to come back to the agenda.
I don't think the developer's here, Nick, so I don't know, I can't answer that. I don't work for the developer despite what was written in the paper. I don't work for the developer.
Does anyone here
So-
know the developer? Does anyone here know the developer? Anyone?
I think there's a difference between knowing the developer and having the authority in this venue at this moment in
I
time.
just, if you know them, I would like a way to get hold of them. And so if someone knows the developer on this board, I would like to contact them. So that I can figure things out. That's all. Does anyone have any contact information?
You
We can
can,
deliver that
you
question.
can, email info@theaurorahighlands.com and address whoever you would like your email to go to, and the office that reads the info at stuff is able to send things to the developer. So info@theaurora Highlands, is
So
an
you say there's no way to find any information out?
No, I'm
Coding errors.
no, I'm not. If you please send an email, our office gets the email and it will be directed to whoever needs to read it. You can put it to the development office, to the developer specifically. You can address it whoever you want, and I'll make sure that the email gets checked and then it gets forwarded who it needs to go to. But we send most of these emails, any questions at all about anything goes to info@theaurora Highlands, and then
I
they're
apologize.
forwarded.
I have to leave because I'm a nurse and I work with COVID myself. I'm out, and like I said, that's why I work so hard. And that's why I'm disappointed. And that's why I'm upset. I put my life on the line every day.
I would love though when you have time to have a follow-up, because again, I want you to have I want you to have the information. The public, see, the difference between, there's misinformation, and we heard some today. Just have the facts so that you can make your own decision, and you're told, and you can weigh between the facts and then the misinformation. And if you give us that opportunity, I would like to have that.
Thank you.
Thank
Everyone
you.
here, thank you. Online, thank you. Have a good day. Merry Christmas.
You too.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Rudy, thank you for that. That's very helpful, because without knowing that, we can't fix things. And again, there's two sides to this thing, and we're in the middle of that, and we want to be a solution. And the only way we can be a solution is we know what the issues are, and then let's figure out how to improve it. And again, improvement doesn't always impact us in our own lives, right? So I can't go back in time and fix what happened with what you were told when you bought, but you can help me fix it for the next buyer. So together, let's do that. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead. There's a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn the Aurora Highlands 1, 2, and 3. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Aerotropolis. One second. Anything else?
Yeah, we read this one. Which one is it?
We're going to go with, Aerotropolis. All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Aerotropolis Area Coordinating Metropolitan District. The chair does see a quorum. Please let the record reflect that Matt, Carla, Michael, and Cindy are all present. Have the disclosures been filed with Secretary of State?
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there further disclosures that need to be filed by any members? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Denise? Mary Ann? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as published?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to public comment. Public comment for A, C, and D. Go ahead and open the floor for anyone who signed up for that. Also with their hand. Start with the room. Anyone wish to make a comment for this district? Thank you very much. We'll go on to me. Did you have? You're on there as me. So,
I'm sorry, that's a remnant from the other one. I'll take that off if I can find it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Just making sure. Thank you, sir. Okay, no public comment. Moving on to the consent agenda. There is none. This one. Moving on to financial matters.
Hey, that's
3A.
I get to talk.
Welcome to come to the party. Yeah.
All right, so the first item is consider approval of the payment of claims for operating costs. They are in your packet right after the agenda. So the first page is the list of checks we are paying this month. They total $48,395.51, and listed behind that check register is the individual invoices by vendor, and the ones that are highlighted in green are capital costs, and that is summarized on the last page. So for general fund operations, you have $16,983.67, and the capital administration is $31,411.84. That totals your $48,395.51. So if you would like to approve payment of those claims.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item is to review and accept the cash position of the district. That's the next page. So this is the cash activity of the district since August the 31st. Reflects the First Bank checking account and the C-Save investment account. The items highlighted that are in italics are anticipated payments. The one item there on your cash sheet, it's dated December the 19th. That's the draw 42 checks. They total $6,961,743.40, and so you'll be seeing a list of those later on as we go down the agenda. So that is, and the items that are highlighted in italicized are the anticipated funding of that. So we're going to get $1.6 million from ARDA. And then the balance is anticipated from the project funds of the anticipated bonus. So after everything has been paid, the district will have $3,140 in general fund operations and approximately $2 million in capital amounts.
Mr. Chairman, this is a motion just to accept the cash statement.
That's correct. Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's made, seconded to accept. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Debbie, for that.
Okay. All right, so then now we're talking about draw. That is 3C. So we have the engineer certification report from Skedio.
The Skedio report was included in your packets of our independent engineer that reviews all the costs of the district and certifies those as public expenditures and verifies that those are accurate. Is there a motion to approve and accept the Skedio report?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's made, second. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Moving on. Thank you.
I think that's it,
Yep.
that sort of takes care of C&D or sort of,
Yes.
there is in your meeting packet after this video report, that goes on for pages and pages and pages. I do a summary by vendor, what that is, so that is the, second to last page of your report. And so if you look on the last page of that, the total amount of this draw was $7.1 million.
Did JHL have, is that including some of last?
No,
That's the finish of the tributary. I was trying to,
yeah, so JHO has, yeah, they have like
5.6 million.
Yeah, they had 3 million last year, so they have
Last month.
5.6.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, or last month.
Yeah.
So after that, this is the list of the 6,961,743.40. So these are the checks that will cover payment of draw 42.
All right. The motion to approve draw 42. Thank you. Motion to made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Motion to made and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to. We would make a motion that we approve item B.
P?
Yeah.
We have, maybe for people who are attending the meeting from the public, not saying you need to go through every one because I think that would take a lot of time, but maybe just to explain the process that gets these on the agenda so that they'll understand that you're not looking through this without understanding what you're voting on, but how you, basically, you go through this all with the construction committee, and the construction committee gets the recommendations of the different engineers with regard to the project items that are under construction and design. So maybe you're on that committee, so maybe that's for you to speak to it, Matt, just so people understand that it's not 3 pages of rubber stamp. There's a lot of work that goes into putting these on the
And we usually argue about change orders for like 3 hours.
Yeah, or days. So,
I think you just explained it. So.
Did you guys hear me? I was taking the other way.
Yeah, so we have a triple step to contracts. Actually, there's 5 steps to it really, but so when construction occurs, there's a task order for that work. Then we get the cost estimate from, which is a competitive public bid process from the contractor. So we're gonna go pave Main Street. We just did that a few Saturdays ago. We get 3 bids for that. Then bid selected. The construction management team then reviews all 3 of those proposals and determines that they're both compliant with law, that they are the best price and best value to the district, and then they make a recommendation to the executive management team that then reviews that to make sure it's within our cost parameters. We have cost parameters that are established to ensure that that the management of those projects does not exceed certain amounts, so that we can control cost. And then that goes to the construction committee, which then reviews it and approves that with a recommendation, I should say, makes a recommendation to the board then that all those steps have occurred from the legal standpoint all the way up to the cost and the pricing standpoint. And then those come before the board for board action. And then actually the construction committee then authorizes the work after all of those steps have been met and the board approves that. What we've done is we've put about 5 steps in place with different organizations reviewing that so that it's not one, like some developments might have one person that says, okay, yeah, that's a great price, let's go do it. Maybe it's their brother-in-law, I don't know. So we make sure we have multiple steps in there and that everything is compliant with state law, including having our attorney review all those documents as well.
Can you explain RFP one more time? Like the bidding process? I think that's super interesting. Like how we go out to bid for these.
For an RFP, so
Yeah.
we do a request for proposal, And so the request for proposals is that, again, if you're paving Main Street, then we solicit multiple bids. Qualified firms. So first of all, they have to be qualified. They have to be bonded and meet all the statutory requirements, so all the state law requirements, that they have enough bonding capacity, that they don't have issues, worker comp issues, or that they're out of reach.
So if all these contractors are buildings are bonded and follow the law, I live right here on Elm Street, and there's a one-way to come out. They're driving recklessly every morning in the opposite way of traffic, rushing down there. How bonded are they? When they're the opposite side, this is every morning. I have to fly over out of the way because they won't go on the correct side, which says construction only, which they should be using. They're going the opposite way against traffic, head on towards me, and flash their lights going to me. I'm following the laws. I'm leaving my home going the correct way of traffic.
See, Ree, I can fix that. See, you need to be my eyes and ears. You let me know what trucks those are, and we will contact
They're
you.
they're independent contractors because there's no locals on these cars.
You can still fix it.
Are they the white? If they're white trucks, it's
No,
JHL.
these are cars, these are trucks. This is every single morning, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
I leave at the same time every morning. I have to, every time I can walk the correct way, there's always someone going down there flashing at me and swerving at me. And I'm doing the right thing. What's the problem around here? These are supposed to be bonded contractors.
That's inexcusable.
So I will say, so bonded contractors is the company's bonded. Doesn't mean they don't have an idiot employee, but
Who's watching?
we can go back to those contractors and tell them that their employees are running up and down the road backwards.
Every day.
Okay.
Every morning. Every
Perfect.
single morning. Riley.
I
Excellent.
know this is probably a strange question, but do you think they are building houses, or are they building the infrastructure? Or is it impossible to tell?
I couldn't tell. All I
Okay,
know is
that's
I'm
fine,
dodging
that's
to get out of
fine.
the way because
We can
they're
give
flashing their lights at me.
I tried
this morning to watch where he went to,
Yeah.
and he was all over the place.
Okay.
He never stopped long enough. I wasn't going to follow him.
Sure.
I walked every morning at 6, and
You be our eyes and ears too.
Yeah,
Because again,
please let us
if we can
know.
figure out where he's going, we can figure out what contractor that is. We can get it. We can get that. Yeah.
50 miles an hour.
Exactly. They're strapped on the wrong side of the road, and they're flashing me at the
Yeah.
right little side.
Right, and we can give that feedback to all the construction
We
managers,
will.
whether it's a home builder or JHL.
We will,
Yeah.
and not to defend them because they're definitely wrong. I think that a lot of the folks that work out here have forgotten that we have residents now,
Yes.
and we need to remind them very kindly and sternly that we do have residents, and there's kids and dogs and people walking around. I think that we've been out here alone for so many years, they forget that now we have houses and residents, and they have to follow them.
And we have had, just so you know, we have had situations even before we had residents, those types of safety issues like that, where we've had employees removed from the job. So the contractor, we reported to the contractor, and they've removed those employees from working on this project. So I'm not saying that they would remove them, but if it kept up and after they told them not to do that.
Morning, from 6 a.m. on Monday through Friday, on eating. I do this every day. I walk at the same time, every single morning.
Okay.
And my biggest fear is my son, who has to ride Uber because there's no bus for Aurora public schools out there, is going to be in that Uber, and that guy's going recklessly, and they're not going to react fast enough. There's going to be a head off.
What grade is your son in?
He's a junior and
Oh, okay. We're not building a high school yet, but there is a lower school coming in 23. So. Yeah. But there you go. California. There you go. I think that's my daughter's going to California. All
Okay,
right.
so back to district capital project.
Thank you. All right, then, the chair would make a motion that we approve items 4B through P and send those to the construction committee for final action.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Don't have any ARDA matters, other business, legal. Back to you, Marianne.
I'm looking. I'm reading.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know that we have anything on this item yet.
We're very close, though.
We're very close to maybe in the January meeting
Um,
or a special meeting?
maybe a special meeting. So my understanding was, as of yesterday, that the attorneys were very close to just finalizing the verbiage that would clear up that issue.
Okay, great. Great, and I mean, I think we can say, I believe we can say publicly that, the construction out here crosses over some East Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sanitation District facilities, and we're working in easements, and so there's a lot of conversation going on with ECCD about those crossings. That's what this is about. And so we're trying.
So if you wandered over to the Aurora Highlands Parkway on the other side, the side that's closed, there's a small area where there's a water line that crosses, and the road would actually put too much cover over the water line. There's ways that you can protect the water line in place. It's called flow fill, so they'll put concrete over there, which then takes the weight and disperses it away from the line. So we've been in negotiations with the water company, which is ECCV, to allow for that to occur so that that section of road can be complete, and then the Aurora Highlands Parkway would be open on both sides in both directions.
Yeah, and the only reason the executive session is noted on here is if for some reason we needed to get board direction on how to negotiate the final settlement of ECCV, we would go into executive session to get that confidential direction. But I think we're working out the issues with them, and there's probably no need for it. I know there's no need for executive session, and I think we're going to get it worked out with a handshake agreement as opposed to anything more.
Yes.
Okay. We're trying to avoid that at all times.
But that's why the road isn't finished over there, guys. Not us. ECCD.
Okay. Then is there any other business to include this board?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. For a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right. Moving on to the Aurora Highlands Community Authority Board. The chair does see a quorum. Please let the record reflect that Matt, Carla, Michael, and Cindy are all present. Have the disclosures been filed with the Secretary of State?
Yes.
Perfect. Are there further disclosures of any present members? No. Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I have one.
Yes.
And I think it's the Timberland proposal.
Yes.
And, and the reason it wasn't on the agenda is because the community feedback that we received kind of evolved into a conversation and evolved into let's maybe see if we can get some support for the management group so that they can, be able to expand their services. So
we're adding that to the agenda.
I would recommend you do. Yeah.
Okay, and where are you suggesting we add that?
We could put it under manager matters, or you can under covenant enforcement. Probably manager matters, don't you?
Yeah, managing.
Yeah, that works.
We'll add a B, and we'll be adding the timberline agreement. Thank you. Okay. Any other changes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Public comment for the cab. Anyone wishing to speak? Okay. John.
Yes. Yes, thank you again. John Henderson. I'd simply like to reiterate the I made earlier with respect to the CAB. First of all, that the CAB agreement that you entered into with yourself 5 times is violating Title 32 and Title 29. Again, more specifically, it violates the Equal Protection Clause, where you're assigning to the developer interest 7 votes and only 1 vote to the various resident districts, so that the developer will always have a majority of 7. The single party agreement, again, that you signed on behalf of all of the districts, where you have a significant conflict of interest with those districts, and particularly the residents, is a avoidable agreement. And finally, the prohibition against authorities like the CAB issuing tax rates, tax debt, and setting mill rates violates Title 29. With respect to the broader issue, I think it really is helpful, as we did tonight have debate about this issue, and I'd be happy to share equal time with anyone from your organization and let the residents decide for themselves who is giving misinformation about these issues. Again, going back to some of the statements that were made, I think it really is disingenuous to say that all of this was set in stone in the service plan and by the city, and it's too late for the residents or you to do anything about it. If that were the case, you wouldn't be having these public hearings to issue $515 million in bonds. And the residents' concern about the rush to this decision is a valid one. You really aren't in a position to spend their money until they're there. Why not wait until they are there so they can make these decisions for themselves? As you know, in the history of special districts were initially designed to be voted on by the people who live there and the people who are going to be affected in paying those taxes. And what you have here is a non-resident, someone with an interest in the property, imposing tax debt on residents for the future without anyone representing their interests. You all have filed your conflict of interest reports. We know who works for who. We know who's paid by who. And not one of you isn't interested in supporting the developers or advancing the developers' interests, even down to the engineer. So if you want true transparency, you need to tell the residents all of this. And I applaud your interest in giving them more transparency. And we have a disclosure form which will do that. It's half a page long, beginning with all the debt that you've voted to impose for them. And it's just, it's dollars and cents. If you're going to impose this debt, they need to know it. And if you're not going to give them a right to vote on it, they need to know that too. So thank you again for your interest in advancing this cause, and I'm happy to continue the conversation with equal time. Take care.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to legal matters. Mary Ann McGeady.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda is a report on the status of the issuance of the 2021 A bonds. These were authorized for issuance at the last authority board meeting, and we have Jason Birmingham, our experienced financial advisor, here to speak to it, and also Kyle Thomas from D.A. Davidson, the underwriters. So I don't know, David, Kyle, do you want to report first on your marketing efforts, and then Jason can report to the board on his review of the terms?
Yeah, sure. So since the last meeting, we posted the preliminary limited offering memorandum, which is the document that's used for describing.
Can everybody hear him okay?
Describing the bonds to the market. We had about 2 weeks that we were marketing those bonds to investors. We had a whole lot of phone calls, a lot of interest in the community. Ultimately, it comes down to finding an interest rate that is as low as we can possibly get it, but is high enough that an investor is willing to purchase. So it's kind of finding that spot in the middle. And so we sold the bonds yesterday. The par amount was $297,464,000 is the exact number that was sold. The bonds were sold to a total of 10 different accounts. Some accounts have bigger allocations, some have smaller. So the type of investors that purchase these bonds are typically mutual funds, and that's who purchased yesterday. So these are high-yield mutual funds that buy tax-exempt bonds in these sort of projects. So those are all independent firms that made their decision that they wanted to invest in this community, and their repayment source will be the debt service mill levy of the district in the future. The interest rate on that bond was 5.75%. That's just a brief summary of the transaction yesterday.
Kyle, I know you ran some numbers for us. I was interested in if we had continued to issue debt at the our old structure of 8%, what that meant for interest, and then what the savings.
Yeah. So what's interesting is this issuance was approximately $300 million. So under the existing structure with the 8% bonds, when we ran that out and just assumed that the same $300 million had been issued, there's really wouldn't even be the capacity to pay all that back because the interest rate is so high. So it's almost, it's a bit challenging to compare apples to apples, but the interest expense for that was about $2.3 billion. So a massive interest expense for 8%. Versus in the situation where we landed, and I'll get the exact number, I don't remember that, I don't have that memorized. 827. Yeah, so I have the real math here. So when we compare what was actually issued and what that interest cost will be over the 30 years, that is one thing I didn't say, that's a 30-year bond. So it projects repayment by 2051. And so the amount of interest that's paid over that time period, just bear with me for a second as this opens up here.
I think the big number is the savings, right? So the savings of interest, or the saving of interest paid is $878 million.
Yes, that's correct. So the total, if you compare the interest paid between the Series 2020 A and B bonds versus the 2021 A and B bonds, so because we're dropping that interest rate, the total savings is $878 million in interest expense over the life of those bonds.
Are we gonna do questions now, or
I don't, it's up to the chair. These bonds, we're just getting a report on, they've already been issued, basically, they're sold and not gonna close.
Yeah.
The public meeting, the second reading is on the B bonds, so it's up to the chair if you wanna entertain questions, and
Nick, I'll give you a chance to speak here in a minute after they're done with their presentation.
yeah, I'd say before you close out on the A bonds, though, Jason Birmingham.
Yes, I was gonna have to go to Jason next.
Yeah.
And then once all of our team has had a chance to speak, then somebody wants to make a comment on them. Go ahead, Jason. There you go.
Thank you so much, members of the board, public. Appreciate the opportunity to be involved and to have a chance to just kind of reflect on the transaction. My name again, Jason Birmingham with Lewis Young Robertson Birmingham. We're the external financial advisor retained by the district for the purposes of evaluating the process, the structure, and all of the terms related to what has now turned to be the $297+ million refinancing of some outstanding debt. I think Kyle has already covered a lot of the process and the interest that many municipal bond funds had relative to this. And it was well received. The terms relative to the interest rate, the call provisions, and really the flexibility of these bonds, and the interest rate proved to be extremely successful, I believe, to the district. It's our opinion, and we're prepared to issue our certificate and our opinion relative to the fairness and the appropriate levels and the structuring deal points that were put into place. I think we really did achieve a very successful bond transaction in terms of the pricing and with the amount of supply that's in the market, with the nature of current investors and just where interest rates are kind of headed overall, with inflationary concerns and risks, construction cost inflation as well, and other factors. We're very comfortable with that opinion, and had a chance to work closely with D.A. Davidson, with their underwriting desk, with their institutional sales force, who had multiple conversations and calls with investors, and it was well received, and we're very comfortable to recommend to this board, the acceptance and moving forward on this particular transaction. I think based on the response that I feel was received on these 2021 A bonds, I think it does set the district up in a good position relative to the next issue, which I think is on here for a second reading, but I do think, based on what we heard from investors and the level of interest, that it does favorably benefit the district in terms of the 2021 B bonds that also will be coming up. So great effort on the part of the underwriter. I think the district certainly put themselves in a good position to be successful. And one of the most important factors that we look at is call flexibility, so that as vertical development happens and more tax base is built, that these bonds still have the flexibility of repayment, so that future refinancing can happen. And so that was an important structural point that we felt very good about, and will give the district, we believe, in the next few years, the ability to even lower the interest rate on this particular debt. So, well done. We felt it was well executed and hit the market pretty good. Hindsight's 2020. There were months ago that interest rates were lower, obviously, before the feds talked about increasing the short-term Fed funds rate, and before some of the other issues in the economy, but we're still at an extremely low level of where interest rates have been nominally over the past 4 decades, really 3.5, 4 decades. So that's our opinion. We're happy to address any questions or comments that anyone might have.
Okay, so we're just finishing up on the A bonds, right? Yeah. And that's just the report on the A bonds. I don't know if you want to go to the B bonds.
B bonds, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, making sure I'm on the same page.
Yep. B bonds.
Okay, so what's been published for today for the authority, CAB, is the consideration at a second reading of the CAB's proposed 2021 B bonds. The published notice indicated that the maximum amount of the B bonds could be $140 million. And these are drawdown bonds, as opposed to the A bonds, which at closing will exchange for cash, and so the money will come in to pay off the outstanding bonds, and also deposit into the project fund available for requisition for new construction sites. The B bonds are drawdown bonds, and so when they close, there'll be 0 bonds issued and 0 cash distributed. It's set up like Kyle, interrupt me if I'm saying it incorrectly, or Christine, I think our bond attorneys as well, almost like a line of credit. So in the event that we expend or have committed the project fund, but need extra funds to complete a project or move forward with a project that's not funded from our bond proceeds, there would be an exchange through the drawdown bonds, so that we would be able to have the money to finish the project. So it's also available for exchange of completed projects if there are completed projects by home builders or developers of projects that are in the long-term capital improvement plan that we have responsibility for funding. So what would happen is if they take on those responsibilities and complete those improvements, the cost verification engineer would go through those, and only the amounts that they identified were public and in our long-term capital improvement plan would get recommended to the board, and that value would get exchanged for funds. So that's the nature of those drawdown bonds. So I don't know, Kyle, do you have any comment on those?
Yeah, no, that it's the next funding source once we expend the project fund that has been established through 2021 A bonds. Mm-hmm. Certainly that is not paying for all of the improvements to be made in the community. There needs to be another funding source, and so that's another funding source that's available.
Yeah, so the question I would have is the sequence the board would like to go in. Christine is here to describe, your bond attorney, she's up on the screen, can describe what's in the bond resolution that you would be considering today. So we could have her describe that resolution first, or we could get Jason's report as the external financial advisor on the terms that are being considered. because those bonds currently are anticipated to be issued to Aurora Highlands, if Aurora Highlands advances money, or if there are others who construct improvements that would be exchanged for value of those bonds. We don't have, how do you say, a market rate. So the rate had to be set by the evaluation of what the market is by Jason Birmingham, who's obviously independent of everybody here as our external financial advisor, and so he would report on the terms of the rate.
I would defer to Christine and Jason on who wants to go first. So.
This is Christine. Why don't I go first and explain the logistics of what's happening here today, and then Jason can step up and explain the financial aspects of it. So again, my name is Christine Lay, and I am with the law firm of QTAC Rock. We serve as bond counsel to the issuer of the bonds, and in front of the board for consideration today is the resolution that you see up on the screen. We call it a bond resolution, and this was in front of the board at the prior meeting on November 18th for consideration on first reading, so it was reviewed and discussed at that time. Today it's being considered on the second reading, and if it's approved today, it will be adopted as the bond resolution approving the bonds. So if it's adopted today, the resolution does several things. First of all, it authorizes the issuance of the bonds. I'll talk more about that. Secondly, it affirms certain prior policies that the district adopted back in 2020 when it issued the prior 2020B bonds, such as a policy of the issuing authority that they will take appropriate action to comply with post-issuance tax compliance policies in order to maintain the tax exemption of the interest on the bond. And as an aside, when you have tax-exempt interest, it's at a lower interest rate, i.e. lower cost of borrowing. So it's important that we maintain that tax-exempt status. Then the bond resolution, if adopted today, also approves the financing instrument, which is the indenture of trust, and I'll talk about that as well in a little bit. So why don't I talk about the bonds first? Mary Ann did a great job describing them. We call them drawdown bonds. Sometimes people refer to them as fill-up bonds. And at issuance, they start out with a principal amount of zero. And accordingly, there's no interest accrual because there's no principal on which to accrue interest. And those bonds stay at zero unless and until the appropriate conditions are satisfied as set forth in the underlying contract, which talks about what must be done in order to, quote, fill up or add principal to the bond. And those include things like approval by the authority of the plans and specifications, approval by the independent engineer, certification of the engineer that the improvements are in fact public, that they are in fact installed and in the ground, and certifications of accountants saying that the costs are good costs and they are appropriate for the expenditure of this particular improvement. And so once those conditions are satisfied, then there's something called an acceptance resolution. That would be done at a board meeting such as the one you're at today. And then that acceptance resolution would authorize the addition of principal to the bond. And that would be in exchange for, as Mary Ann said earlier, completed public infrastructure that's in the ground, certified, approved, and we know it's a good public infrastructure cost. And so it'll remain at zero unless and until that happens. Now the indenture that is the governing instrument for the bond, it sets forth a lot of what I just talked about. It commits a source of repayment of revenue to the repayment of the bonds, and it sets forth the various payment provisions, funds and accounts, payment due dates, and it talks about things that, again, in order to maintain the tax exemption on the bonds, that the authority needs to continue doing and maintaining its records. So that's essentially what the resolution does. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, or I can pause like Jason. Questions. Members of the board, any questions?
Okay, why don't we go ahead and go to Jason and then Jason?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. I think that was a very helpful introduction to the resolution, overview, I should say, of what's contemplated in the Series 2021B bonds, which are described as drawdown bonds. I'd also mention and reference that these bonds are subordinate bonds, so they're subordinate to a pledge of revenues that are going to the senior bonds that we've talked about. So the revenue streams that are committed to that are first and foremost to the senior or the priority bonds, and then these are subordinate. So as they're drawn down, as was indicated and mentioned, they will begin accruing interest on that portion and will become the bonds that are outstanding as they're drawn upon. So in a lot of instances, this is a positive way to incur construction-related costs because you don't start accruing the interest on the actual proceeds that you're entitled to receive until you actually draw those bonds down and you start accruing the interest. So their subordinate is one, key feature that differentiates these particular bonds from others. Secondly, they're contemplated to be issued as variable rate bonds, and so the resolution contemplates a not to exceed interest rate that allows for flexibility given where variable rates of interest are. And, our role in this would be to evaluate the pricing of how the subordinate Series 2021B bonds would be priced, what specific or particular indice or index would be used under which to price those, and then other structuring determinations that would come as a result of marketing, pricing, and selling these bonds. Because the nature is it's subordinate, a subordinate bond, the investors that we would be approaching would anticipate a little more yield to match what they believe to be a little more risk associated with the cash flows. But the way it's being structured is both a drawdown, which only accrues interest as it's drawn down, and that there's flexibility in resetting the price, potentially even using a lower period of time on the yield curve that might bring the interest rate down. And so as we proceed with this, if the board's desire is to proceed with the 2021B bonds, the drawdown bonds, those would be the main points of interest as we go to market these bonds with the underwriter, is to look at those specific things, including, how do we set the interest rate and what's the appropriate level for that interest, and also the flexibility again on prepayment, call flexibility, early redemption. So as cash flow materializes, changes, there's more credit, if you will, that there's an opportunity to refinance and restructure the debt for the benefit of lowering the overall debt service obligation to the district. So I think that's in a nutshell kind of an overview of the B bonds and kind of a little bit of the differentiation from the priority bonds or the senior bonds that we've already talked about.
Questions for Jason? All right. And Christine, I look to you. I think we're ready to go into, and Mary Ann, into a public hearing.
Yeah.
And this is the second reading and public hearing. Okay. And at this time, the chair will open the public hearing for item 3B1A. At this time, we'll take public comment. Yeah. Yes, Nick.
I appreciate all
all of the emphasis being placed on the savings and the reduced taxes or the interest rate, and both on the reissuance of bonds and the new bond. But just from a matter of perspective from this side of the room, what this is me going to a car dealership to buy a new car, spending your money, and coming back without your permission, by the way, coming back and saying, oh, by the way, don't worry, I got you a great interest rate. So you guys are spending this money and bragging about the savings on the lower interest rate, but we're spending our money. Just for perspective from this side of the room.
Any other questions? Comment? Okay, John from Maine.
John Henderson again, thank you very much. I just reincorporate my prior comments, but more specifically with respect to the bond counsel from Kudarak Rock. I would hope that you all would indicate in your bond prospectus that the residents voted against this and that the individuals who voted for it all have a conflict of interest with the residents who will actually be paying the taxes. Thank you.
Other comments? Go ahead and close the public hearing then.
Mr. Chairman, are you ready for a motion?
I am.
I will move for the approval of agenda item 3B1A.
Recommend it.
I'm looking.
Does include I as well?
Yeah, little one.
Yeah, and then little one. Is that your motion?
Yes,
Basically to approve item B.
Yes.
It's all under item B.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Arlo is abstaining from that. Thank you. Moving on.
Thank you.
Mary Ann, you're up again.
Yes, the next item on the agenda is Border Care Adventist Health System agenda matters. Trying to think of context, how to describe what's happening here. Their Border Care Adventist is looking at acquiring property to be located within the project. They have not closed on that yet. They are a tax exempt entity. They do recognize their need, even though they are a tax exempt entity, to contribute to the capital costs for the community and the public infrastructure, and also to provide an annual payment to support operations. We have a payment in lieu of taxes covenant on the property that the authority benefits from. So and it doesn't apply to government facilities, it doesn't apply to fire stations and city facilities and that sort of thing. But Porter, being a nonprofit hospital, would have the obligation under that pilot to pay property taxes. And with regard to their location in the community, they would prefer to make a one-time payment towards the capital costs and contractually commit to the operating expenses. So the two action items that would be for the board's consideration is one, to approve a pilot exception agreement that would get recorded on the property as an incentive to have Porter to locate within the community. And that pilot exception agreement, when executed, would identify the dollar amount that they would contribute. The dollar amount for them to contribute towards the capital costs has been calculated by D.A. Davidson based on their modeling of what their property taxes would be and what they would contribute over time if Porter were actually paying property taxes. Our recommendation on that point is that the board have your independent external financial advisor review the calculation prepared by D.A. Davidson. If they agree that that's the present value of that capital cost contribution, that if Porter agrees to pay that you would support the pilot exception agreement with that amount. On the operations funding side, it's a similar exercise in terms of forecasting and identification of maintenance support. So again, if Jason is comfortable with the financial contribution that they're going to make based on our projections, that the board would be comfortable with that final resolution and have authorized the president to execute that pilot exception agreement. Related document is the Port of Care Operation Funding and Contribution Agreement. The pilot exception agreement is just reported on the property and relates to how that pilot applies. The actual operations funding and contribution agreement is what would implement that understanding and give the contractual commitment to make those payments and the enforcement right of the authority to collect over time. So again, the action that staff is recommending is that you proceed to authorize the president to execute those documents so long as the final numbers in them are determined to be reasonable by your external financial advisor.
I have one question. So the capital is gonna be one-time payment. How about the operations? Is that gonna be one-time or is that?
No, the operations and maintenance payment would be an annual payment.
Okay.
So every year there'd be a calculation of those operating costs and then an invoice sent and then a payment made. I would also like to note that if Porter for some reason sells that tax exempt the facility to an entity that's not tax exempt, then property taxes would be paid. Okay.
That's a good point. I was gonna ask you that.
Yeah, and that could happen over the next 40, 50 years. It might become a private hospital, not a nonprofit, and so they pay their share in a different way. Okay,
So this is to help the district the whole because they don't pay taxes.
Exactly.
Because they're nonprofit.
Yeah, if we didn't have these agreements in place, then Porter would locate here, they'd be tax exempt, they wouldn't pay a contribution towards the public infrastructure, and they wouldn't pay the recurring operating expenses. I think they recognize that the need to do that, but we're trying to make it in a way that as a tax exempt entity, they can be comfortable.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
With that, Michael, I know that you've worked on this issue, so I think this is important, and
I'd like to make the motion.
I want to allow you to make that motion.
Thank you, because we have a policy of the CAD board to have pilots for tax exempt, but in this particular instance, we're making an exception to get the one-time payment and the ongoing operation and maintenance. So we're putting this in place subject to the deal actually closing and that we're getting the correct advice from Jason and the underwriter. So based on those facts, I'll make a motion for the approval of agenda items 3C, 1, and 2.
The motion has been made. Is there a second? Second, thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. We're going to take a 2-minute recess. We're going to be in a 2-minute recess.
sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order.
Right, financial matters, is on page 37 of the meeting packet. Checklist for the cab. And these checks total $68,159.96. And for some reason, all the copies of the checks got put in there, so we really didn't need that.
Oh, well.
And then there is, again, the list of by vendor, all of the individual invoices. And these are all administrative costs, except for there's some legal in there for $13,000 that was capital related.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the administrative claim? So motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Michael. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Item next, B. Cash position.
4049.
Okay.
Of the meeting packet. So this is the cash position of the district. District just really has a checking account at First Bank, so this is just all the activity. We do have a working capital account with Zions Bank that we've been, for the past 3 months, using that money to help fund administrative expenses, and so we have used up this month the last of those funds.
All right.
What do
Discussion. We just need a motion to accept.
To accept the cash report, I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Moving on to item C. So this is the schedule report that was adopted by ACMD with the recommendation for the CAB to approve. Is there a motion to approve the schedule report, independent engineers verification cost?
Should that be
All
like?
right, motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
For clarification, it's report 42. I think there's a typo on the
Yeah,
agenda.
it should be draw number.
It's draw 42.
Thank you.
Yep. Hold on a second. Good catch there, but I have.
My agenda says item 4D, it's draw 42.
You are correct. My apologies. The 40, how do you say, it's 2 different report series. So the 42, Deb, is different improvements than the 41.
Yeah.
You're correct.
In-track.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. That is 41.
Yeah.
So that is 41. So your motion is correct.
Okay.
So
What is the 41 now?
it's
the
the schedule report for the in-track.
Is this the 1 million?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Now we're going to go on to draw 42, schedule report.
Okay.
And again, that was approved by ACMD with the recommendation that the CAB approved. Again, this is verification of costs related to construction and design. All the costs have been verified and match the draw. Is there a motion to approve item D?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Draw 42 is approved.
And 41.
And 41. Yes.
Thank you.
41 on in-track. Yes. Moving on to item, I already did that one. Those are separate. Item 5A, manager's report.
Nothing much to report on managers or covenant portions. I appreciate people letting me know when there's issues out in the community. So if management doesn't pick the trash up, please let me know so we can get them squared away.
And can I add to that real quick?
Yeah.
And I know some people already left, but hopefully we'll get this message out. Please, let's get that out to everyone. Is issues like that, instead of, really trying to fight that on his own, it's much better if it comes to the district because obviously we have a little more leverage there because of the contract and one guy trying to get his trash re-picked up.
Absolutely. I have a direct text to the regional manager. So when people don't come to us, we don't know that there are issues out there and we can get them back on the right track. So please do tell me. It's helpful. You just said that information. I got one earlier today on violation matter that it maybe can be nipped in the bud, so people just dip in the tea and just leave it right on them. Better they don't know about them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
For the process, it should have it completed within the next 2 weeks. But as a resident, a communication board that will be positive, not a place to complain, just simply complain. But it's more of a community awareness. But it's going to be a Google page that people can be a part of. And it looks like it's probably going to be connected with the Facebook page as well. To be able to keep us all informed, you know, concerning staff, pillaging, you know, just whatever that takes place in the community that help us to be aware and to support.
So in another community that I manage, there is a Facebook, resident Facebook page. Only residents and people with property in the contract can be members of it. And the woman who facilitates that page permits me to be on it, and I just kind of watch. I don't post anything, but if I see something come up that maybe would be helpful for people to know, I do don't put the person's comes out on her because of this management that picked them up. She'll then put something on the page that helps people of what's going on, and that seems to be a good system.
And I'll bring that to you, I will be the administrator of that.
Yeah.
Just to be the simple point of contact.
And
that's somebody that's here that can help facilitate some information that really helps you facilitate some actions as well.
Well, people don't think anything about posting something on Facebook, but they won't call or email and say what's going on. So I can just kind of keep a quiet run on what's happening in the community. It's way easier to get information. People sooner if I know what's happening. So it's been and that community has worked really well. We had some issues with the post office. We were able to get with the city and get straightened out pretty quickly and things like that. So.
I'll have that information.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that.
I want to go back, is that okay?
Yes. Go back?
Yeah, the go back is Deb, we were working on the first requisition from the A-bonds.
Yep.
And so I don't know that when we went through the financial matters, we reported on that and got more direction clearly on that. So do you have a copy of that to hand out?
Yes,
to
it
was in the packet. Yep.
Is it,
okay, that's gonna be one adjustment.
I was gonna say, I don't think that's accurate because Deb and I've been working on this today. That looks like it, yes.
So I mean, the actual form is accurate.
Yes.
The number is gonna change just because, cause I thought, well, 42, I just didn't realize that 41 was the acceptance of those impact costs. And so those will be added to this requisition.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is very similar to what we do like with ARDA and other boards do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think where we are at is Deb is scrubbing and making sure that as many costs as have been accepted through the different engineers reports and through the meeting today would be refinanced at the lower interest rate. And so that's why it took a little bit of time to get the numbers right. Okay, so I don't know, Deb, if you want to just advise the board on what the final numbers are for that requisition and make sure we have clear board direction to process that.
So what it is the first part, there's a part A on here. That is the funding for the draw 42 check. For that, yeah,
for the AAC&D expenses for construction.
Yeah. Okay. So that's less. We had about 740,000 left of ARDA when the ARDA paid us.
Right.
So that's the AAC&D checks less the ARDA. So that's 4.7 million.
I'm sorry, can you say clearly what that number is? Just like, yeah.
4.7.
It's right on the front page.
I want everybody to hear.
Okay. It's $4,700,141.83.
Okay, just
that's the fund the AAC.
We approved the draw. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, part B of this is going to increase the 1.12 million. Because we're going to add 41 amount on
yesterday I did, calculate the interest due on this set of payments, and it's like about $12,000. So, the, second payment is to reimburse, Aurora Highlands LLC for all of the, in-track payments that they have funded us with cash. And it's, and the HTEP, so it's, it's repaying all the HTEP costs, which are draws 22 to 41, and that, the total of that is 1.4 million, approximately. And then the INTAC bond, which needs to be reversed on draw 41, which is $11,000. So the amount that we're gonna pay is the 2,286,193.12 plus, the 1.2 million on this draw.
Any action required on this, or is this just information?
There's action required, we need to approve the requisition.
Okay, so we're gonna take this as a motion. So upon the approval of the draws, we are authorizing the president to sign the requisition.
Yes.
Not just this one. That's exactly this. Normally, because this is an administrative matter.
Yeah,
But
okay.
the approval of this is the board. So with that, could I have that motion authorizing to sign requisitions upon the board's approval of?
Basically, the plan claims to.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
And
Motion's
I
been
will
made.
update this for the new numbers and get it to you.
Yes. So this will be the administrative form that we use moving forward for the requisition.
Yes, and that form is a part of the bond indenture.
Okay.
So, yeah, and it's because it's the first time we're drawing under that.
Sure.
We just wanna make sure we have it all
Well,
set.
that's why I want to make sure that it was
Yeah.
a motion that carried
So,
through.
this will be ready for when we have bond closing and we have project funds. I will submit this and then we can get funding. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And this was already in the bond indenture, so.
Yes.
Okay. So,
I will also make the motion to adjourn.
well, no. We weren't done. Mary Ann hijacked the meeting.
I did, I just had to go back.
You take 1 minute, then so I can go visit the men's room here.
Yes.
1 minute.
No one knew than I knew.
I'm sorry, Mary Ann. Yeah, I got that. We'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. The last item will be item 5. It's not, sorry. Item 5B, which is the Timberline agreement. Mary Ann,
This is
could I have?
the new extra item that you put on the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Mary Ann, could you speak on this?
Yeah, and he and I have spoken about this as well. Jerry Jacobs and his, company, Timberline, he does provide,
management services in the space where you have covenant enforcement and you have a lot of community services provided by, in this case, the authority, in many of those cases, special districts. And so he is uniquely situated to come in and kind of work with Denise and the board to be able to get the communication going more effectively and the services provided, and also the covenant enforcement. I mean, a year ago we didn't need the covenant enforcement support from Gary because there were no households here. But now we have people that want to put fences up and either finish their landscaping or put up a dog run, and those kinds of needs for someone to put in an application, get a very timely response, and be able to efficiently execute. We need some more support to do that. And we now have, as you said, Denise, we've jumped from 30-something households to 63 COs, and we've got how many more builders that are coming online in the community. And so it's now, I don't think it's prudent to wait any longer to get somebody with his skill set to support Denise on the board in providing the services that the residents need.
Well, I wasn't aware that district management didn't include covenant enforcement.
We actually are.
That's what I thought.
Inspections, monthly during the winter and during the summer.
That's what we need more help.
Well, it's not going to be duplication. It's going to be, we're going to have a division of labor so that Timberline can focus to, they have more of kind of the community side of it.
I work with Jerry on Town Center in the Free Valley Ranch. And he does all my Oakwood stuff.
And you like it?
Yeah, he's very easy to work with.
We wanted something with, they have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week line that's available. The payments and the district board management and the holder of records will still be COA, and Denise and Jerry will get together and talk about where it makes sense to have more of a community focus versus just the kind of a board management focus.
Yeah, and it's somewhat like the legal services. I mean, we can, for instance, we recommended an attorney to come and support the board with all of the public bidding and construction work. It's not that our office can't do that. It's just that there's so much activity in this project. It made more sense to have a different law firm take care of those matters for you so we could focus on the other services that we need supported. It's just this is a huge project with an incredible amount of activity.
Okay.
So that's our, and again, I think the feedback you're hearing from the residents today reflects
I did notice that.
You need some
Okay.
support.
Community involvement, community discussion.
Yeah, but Denise and Jerry are gonna work together to sort out who does what, so there's not duplication.
Right, but I'll make the motion to approve the Timberline District Contract.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Did you have any covenant matters that we need to discuss? Okay, thank you. Then who would like to make the motion? Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. We are adjourned.